Book nibbles. Big ideas, small bites. Robert Cialdini opens influence, the psychology of persuasion with a disarming confession. He has always been a bit of a sucker. Time and again, he found himself buying things he didn't really need, signing up for offers he hadn't planned on, or agreeing to favors he didn't actually want to do. The question that nagged him was, why? Why, even when we know better, do we allow ourselves to be swayed by clever salespeople, smooth-talking strangers, or even the subtle cues of those around us? Out of that curiosity came a years-long immersion in the science of persuasion. Cialdini embedded himself with sales organizations, fundraisers, advertisers, and compliance professionals of every sort to see what tricks of the trade they used. What he discovered is that beneath all the surface tactics, there are a handful of universal psychological principles, levers of influence that can be used ethically to persuade or unethically to manipulate. His book is both a catalog of these principles and a guide to recognizing them in the wild. The first and perhaps most universal principle he describes is reciprocity. Human beings everywhere live by the rule that favors should be returned. If someone does something for you, you feel a strong, almost automatic obligation to do something back. This is not a trivial courtesy. It is the glue that holds social groups together. But because it is so deeply ingrained, it can be exploited. Cialdini illustrates with the example of the Hare Krishnas, who became notorious in airports for giving passers-by small flowers or trinkets, and then immediately asking for a donation. Most people didn't want the flower, yet they felt compelled to give money because of the rule of reciprocity. The obligation to repay even an unwanted favor is strong enough to open wallets that would otherwise remain shut. Marketers know this too. The free sample is not just a taste, it's a psychological trigger. Even political negotiations run on reciprocity. Concessions beget concessions. Cialdini emphasizes that reciprocity is not inherently manipulative. It makes generosity and cooperation possible. But when we fail to notice how automatic our responses are, we can be tricked into unbalanced exchanges. His defensive advice is to recognize when a favor is actually a tactic, and if so, accept the gift without feeling compelled to give back. Closely related to reciprocity is the way people are drawn into commitments. Cialdini notes that once we make a decision, particularly if we put it into words or write it down, we feel pressure to behave consistently with it. This drive for consistency makes us reliable, which is useful in social life, but it can also lock us into choices that no longer serve us. He tells the story of a toy company that would advertise popular toys around Christmas, knowing stores would run out of stock, leaving parents to promise their children the toy, but unable to deliver. Months later, after the holiday, the company would re-advertise the toy, and parents, driven by the need to keep their word, would return to buy it. Similarly, salespeople use the lowball technique. They get a customer to agree to a favorable deal, then later change the terms, counting on the buyer's desire to stay consistent with their original commitment. People even justify their decisions retroactively to themselves, convincing themselves that a changed or less attractive deal is still a good one. Cialdini observes that this power of consistency can also be used for positive ends. Teachers, for instance, get students to commit publicly to goals, making them more likely to follow through. But again, the lesson is to guard against being maneuvered into commitments you never intended to make. Another principle Cialdini explores is social proof, the tendency to look around at what others are doing to decide what we should do. In uncertain situations, this reliance on others' behavior is a shortcut that often serves us well. If everyone in a restaurant is laughing, we are more likely to find the joke funny. If many people are donating to a cause, we are more likely to give too. But social proof can also lead us astray, especially when it creates the illusion of consensus. Cialdini points to the case of television laugh tracks. Even though most viewers claim to dislike canned laughter, experiments show it makes them laugh more, simply by signaling what the group response should be. In more tragic cases, social proof can lead to paralysis, as in the infamous murder of Kitty Genovese in New York, where dozens of bystanders failed to intervene because each assumed others would act. When everyone looks to everyone else, inaction becomes contagious. Marketers and con artists exploit social proof by manufacturing popularity. Fake lines outside clubs, planted testimonials, inflated bestseller claims. The safeguard, Cialdini argues, is to step back and ask whether the crowd is genuinely knowledgeable or just following itself in circles. Cialdini then turns to the power of liking. It seems obvious that we prefer to say yes to people we like, but what is less obvious is how easily that liking can be engineered. Physical attractiveness is the most straightforward factor. Attractive people are perceived as more intelligent, more honest, and more talented, even when there is no evidence for it. This halo effect means that a good-looking salesperson has a built-in advantage. Similarity is another factor. We are more easily influenced by people who share our background, interests, or even superficial traits like dress and accent. Compliments, too, can create liking even when we know they are insincere. And association works powerfully. Cialdini recounts how sports fans bask in their team's glory by saying we won, but distance themselves from failure when they lost. Advertisers exploit this by associating products with celebrities or desirable lifestyles, hoping that the positive feelings will rub off. Cialdini urges readers to separate the merits of the request from their feelings toward the requester. Just because we like someone doesn't mean we should automatically comply with them. Authority is another principle, so powerful it can override our own judgment. From early childhood, we are taught to obey authority figures, and this deference keeps society functioning. But blind obedience can be dangerous. Cialdini highlights the famous Milgram experiments, in which ordinary people administered what they thought were dangerous electric shocks to others simply because a man in a lab coat told them to. The subjects often protested but still continued, showing how authority can silence conscience. Marketers know the trappings of authority. Titles, uniforms, and symbols like luxury cars or scientific jargon are often enough to command compliance. Even doctors and other professionals can be manipulated by the appearance of authority in drug reps or research studies. The safeguard is to recognize the difference between legitimate expertise and the mere appearance of authority. Ask whether the authority figure truly knows what they are talking about and whether they have your interests at heart. The principle of scarcity is perhaps the most viscerally persuasive. People value things more when they are rare or threatened with loss. Limited time offers, exclusive memberships, and only 2 left in stock messages all play on this bias. Scarcity works because opportunities seem more valuable when their availability is limited, and because loss aversion, the pain of losing something, is stronger than the pleasure of gaining. Cialdini cites studies showing that people rate the same cookie as more desirable when it comes from a nearly empty jar than when it comes from a full one. Scarcity also fuels competitiveness. When people see others competing for limited resources, the desire intensifies. Scarcity is not always manipulative. Sometimes resources really are limited. But Cialdini warns against letting urgency cloud judgment. If you feel pressured by scarcity, step back and ask whether you truly want or need the item, not just the thrill of chasing something that seems scarce. Across these principles, a common thread emerges. Our brains rely on shortcuts or heuristics to make decisions quickly and efficiently. In most cases, these shortcuts serve us well. Reciprocity fosters cooperation. Consistency creates reliability. Social proof guides us in uncertainty. Liking smooths social interactions. Authority allows expertise to guide us. And scarcity motivates us to seize opportunities. But when these triggers are activated artificially, without the substance to back them up, we can be led into unwise decisions. Cialdini emphasizes that influence itself is not bad. It is the lifeblood of human society. The real danger is when influence becomes manipulation. Cialdini's book is not merely descriptive. It is also prescriptive. He provides readers with practical defenses against undue influence. For reciprocity, learn to distinguish genuine favors from calculated tricks and accept the former without feeling obliged to the latter. For consistency, resist being cornered into commitments you don't want by recognizing the tactic early. For social proof, question whether the group truly knows what it's doing or whether it's simply copying itself. For liking, separate your positive feelings about a person from the merits of their proposal. For authority, check both the credentials and the trustworthiness of the source. For scarcity, pause to ask whether the desire is for the item itself or simply for its scarcity. By slowing down and reflecting, you can break the automatic response that compliance professionals depend on. What makes Cialdini's work enduring is not only the clarity with which he explains these principles, but the vividness of his examples. He recounts cases from advertising, sales, politics, and even his own life, making the reader nod in recognition. We have all been nudged by reciprocity when accepting an unwanted gift, cornered by a small commitment that snowballed, swept up by a crowd's enthusiasm, charmed by a likable person, overawed by authority, or tempted by something scarce. The genius of the book is in making the invisible visible. Once you see the strings, you are less likely to be the puppet. And yet, Cialdini also acknowledges the double edge of this knowledge. The same principles that can be used to manipulate can also be used ethically to lead, teach, and inspire. A teacher who gives genuine praise, liking, sets clear expectations, consistency, shows expertise, authority, and makes learning feel like a scarce opportunity can profoundly motivate students. Leaders who use reciprocity to create a culture of giving or social proof to build positive norms can strengthen communities. Influence is not something to be avoided. It is something to be understood and used wisely. By the end of the book, Cialdini returns to his original confession. He admits that even after years of research, he still sometimes falls prey to these principles. That is how deeply ingrained they are. But the difference is that now he notices, and noticing is the first step to resistance. Influence is everywhere, invisible as air, but once you learn to detect it, you can breathe a little easier. And that's it. Robert Cialdini's Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion. Thanks for listening to Book Nibbles. If you enjoyed this bite-sized book, don't forget to subscribe for more quick, insightful summaries. See you in the next nibble.